During a recent CNN town hall, Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley offered her embarrassing, irrational takes on gun violence in the U.S. and how to stop it. Intrigued? Then click that like and subscribe and enjoy the video. Nikki Haley, what can we say about her? Well, she was the Republican governor of South Carolina, and then under the Trump administration, she served as the United States ambassador to the United Nations, which might explain in part why we were so reviled and mocked by the rest of the world during Trump's presidency. Well, now she has formally announced her candidacy against President Trump for the Republican nomination, hoping to take on President Biden in the 2024 general election. She's almost certainly going to fail. I suppose it's entirely possible that a miracle could occur, but this woman is polling at like 5%. The nearest peer to Donald Trump in terms of the Republican nomination is Ron DeSantis, and even he is like 20 to 30 points behind. So almost certainly Nikki Haley stands no chance. It doesn't help the fact that, like many of the other Republican rivals to the Republican nomination against Donald Trump, she is very slow, lethargic even, to criticize Donald Trump. She ducks and weaves like Neo in The Matrix, does everything in her power to try to avoid being in direct opposition to Donald Trump, even as she is technically in direct opposition to Trump by challenging his nomination for the presidency. It's all very bizarre political calculus from my perspective. Well, CNN offered her a town hall, because of course they did. They're trying to moderate even more. They're trying to, appeal to the Fox News viewer, I suppose, in the aftermath of Tucker Carlson's absence. I don't know exactly what the business model is here, because CNN was fairly centrist in the ways that we would consider it a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. This is nothing new. But anyway, they offered Nikki Haley a town hall platform. And during the course of that conversation, she gave her opinion. She opined about guns and the Second Amendment and gun violence in the United States and what needs to be done about it. So I want to play a couple of clips here and just unpack it, because it's embarrassing and it's irrational. So let's hear it straight from her mouth.
The reason a lot of these happen, and you mentioned a shooting at the schools, you need to end gun-free zones. Gun-free zones. When you look at killers, always look for a place that's a gun-free zone, because guess what? Nobody else is going to be able to protect themselves.
So you hear this a lot, and I guess over the years I thought that maybe the sentiment would go away because it's so ridiculous. So the United States experiences a disproportionately high rate of gun violence between suicides and homicides, particularly for such a developed nation. We are almost in a league of our own. I think we are in a league of our own in terms of like G7 nations, the most advanced, educated, wealthiest nations on the planet. This is a uniquely U.S. problem, given our many privileges. And when Nikki Haley is saying, listen, we have a lot of gun violence, the solution, particularly in mass shootings and school shootings, end gun-free zones, make guns more readily available, which is so bizarre to me. It's almost like saying, you know what the trick is to solving forest fires or like arson? More matches, more gasoline. If we get rid of match and gasoline-free zones, we will reduce the number of fires. It's so weird. It's so counterintuitive. It's so irrational, and it's predicated not on data, but on this notion that a good guy with a gun, whatever that means, and I don't even know how you would begin to know that a person is a good guy with a gun, but basically the ubiquity of guns. If you know that guns are out there, they'll make us safer. But the United States has more guns than people already, right? It's not like we are lacking in guns and lacking in the availability of guns. So at what point does the sheer number of guns make us safer? Because the logic would seem to indicate, given that we have more than one gun for every person in the U.S., doesn't seem to be like the number of guns functions as a deterrent against crime. I don't know. I want to play another clip here, also from the same CNN town hall. It's a longer clip, so we've sped it up to 1.25 speed, and she's asked about guns and mass shootings, and so let's, again, hear it straight from Nikki Haley's mouth.
What meaningful steps would you take to prevent mass shootings in soft target areas, such as schools, shopping malls, and other areas where responsible citizens can't really carry their firearm?
It's an important question for our country because I have a mom heart. I know there are a lot of parents in the audience that realize that we worry about our kids. My daughter works in a hospital. I worry about something happening there. My son is in college. I worry about something that could happen on campus. But I think in order to deal with this, we have to be honest. We have to have an honest conversation about how we deal with this. First of all, 80% of the shootings that happen in schools, they have stolen that gun from family members. Understand that. Secondly, more murders are caused by street crime than anything else. So let's start focusing on what we can deal with. First of all, let's get illegal guns off the street. Let's have the backs of law enforcement. Let's get illegal guns off the street. Secondly, let's make sure when it comes to our schools, secure our schools. There should be one point of entry. There should be a law enforcement officer at every school. We should make sure there's the clear bulletproof tape that we have at courthouses and airports. We should have that on our schools to protect them. And we should have a mental health counselor at every single school, not a guidance counselor, but a mental health counselor. Then we need to make sure that the feds actually vet properly. When I talked about the church shooting that we had, that murderer, when he went to go buy a gun, because the feds didn't do it in the time allotted, they gave him the gun anyway. He should never have gotten it. It would have been flagged that he wasn't supposed to have one. So first, let's have the feds do the job they're supposed to do already. And then let's deal with the cancer in America that no one has dealt with and we have to deal with, and that's mental health. 1 in 4 people have a mental health issue. But if treated, they can live a perfectly normal life.
Folks, I don't even know where to begin. So, again, this idea that, well, actually, we need to make schools like fortresses, right? We need to make schools like fortresses. We need to secure them in every which way. The United Kingdom doesn't have to do that. Germany doesn't have to do that. Japan doesn't have to do that. These other advanced economies, these other advanced nations, they don't have to do these things. Why is this unique to the United States? It's not like, Sweden or Switzerland, or, it's not like other nations have to do this. Why is it that other nations, as advanced as we are, and in some cases, like I think it's Switzerland, with a reasonably comparably high rate of gun ownership, why don't they have to do this? What is unique to this country? And so then she suggests, hypocritically, that it's mental health. Well, let's set aside the fact that the Republican Party has waged a war on mental health in so many respects by trying to thwart the expansion of mental and physical health care in this country. You would think if they really cared about mental health, they would want to make mental and physical health care in this country either universal or as hilariously, ludicrously, stupidly cheap as possible, and universally available with no issues about preconditions or allowing insurance to run roughshod. You would think that that's the case, but they haven't supported that, and they don't do that because they actually don't believe it's a mental health issue and they don't care, even if it was. But let's assume that it was mental health. Right? Clearly, mass shooters are not mentally healthy, so I can accept the premise. But is the United States the only country on the planet to have mental health issues? Is that what they're suggesting? And if that is what they're suggesting, why is that? The conservative movement, the Republican Party, which says that America is great and America is an exceptional nation, it seems to be baked into their argument that America is actually exceptionally mentally unhealthy. I imagine they wouldn't say that if you ask them that bluntly, like, wait a minute, are you saying that America is uniquely mentally ill or mentally unhealthy? I doubt they would opine that, right? And also there's no data to support it, right? The mental health issues that plague this country, to whatever extent that they do, can be found in the United Kingdom, in Germany, in Canada, in France, in every other developed nation on the planet. And yet, compared to those other nations, the United States has a uniquely high rate of gun violence. Why? Could it be, perhaps, that it's because we have a uniquely high rate of gun ownership in the country? That seems to be the outlier. That seems to be the one data point which confirms everything. But I don't know. Anyway, I wanted to play those clips because, again, Nikki Haley stands no chance in this Republican presidential primary. But it just goes to show that when it comes to these very important substantive issues, the Republican Party has no idea. They have no ideas, they have no policies, and in fact, they're just saying, listen, we need to address mental health, but they will never address mental health because they don't care about mental health. We need to secure schools. Well, okay, but also, why do we have to? Why is there a situation where schools have to become fortresses and kids are effectively prisoners when no other nation on the planet has to do that? Perhaps, what if schools can continue to be schools with reasonable levels of security, as all schools have, without needing a SWAT team on standby and a button where like these wrought iron gates drop and a moat is erected and a drawbridge is lifted. Like, well, perhaps there are other ways to protect schools and to protect children without radically reimagining the education system in this country as effectively the new prison industrial complex. Maybe there's a way to do that. And it could be stricter and better enforced gun laws to reduce the number of guns in this country. Perhaps. Just a thought.